The engine we'll be using for our winterization video is a 70 horsepower Johnson 3-cylinder. Step 1 is removing the propeller. Using the needle nose pliers, straighten out the cotter pin. Once it's straightened, use a set of side cutters or pliers to pull it out, straight out. The next thing we want to do is remove the nut. And we're going to take a board or a block of wood and put it between the propeller and the cavitation plate to prevent the prop from moving. We're going to use a socket or a wrench, the appropriate size, and turn the nut counterclockwise to remove it. Now remove the washer that you find behind the nut. And now pull the propeller to remove it. Now we want to remove the propeller back washer. Stabilizing the fuel in the tanks. Let's get started by using a good quality gas stabilizer. The product that we use is called Seafoam. If you're using this product or any gas stabilizer, fuel stabilizer product that you buy, follow the directions very carefully. So you may have a portable tank, you may have 2 portable tanks, maybe even 3 or 4. All the tanks will need to have gas stabilizer added to them. If your boat has an inboard or built-in tank, calculate how much fuel is in the tank, then add stabilizer according to the directions on the label of the stabilizer that you're using. So we're opening the tank. We're going to add our fuel stabilizer to the tank. Close the cap. Shake the tank gently to mix the stabilizer with the fuel. If you have an inboard fuel tank, try rocking the boat gently to help mix the fuel stabilizer into the fuel in the inboard tank. We're going to connect the flusher and the water hose to the outboard. This is the typical flusher with an attachment for your water hose. So tighten your hose onto your flusher. Take the flushers and slide them over the front of the lower unit. You want to bring them up so that they're covering the intake holes. Okay, we're ready to start the outboard. So the first thing you want to do is turn the tap on, turn the water on. And now you can start up the outboard. Make sure the outboard's cooling system indicators are spitting water. Water should be coming out of the exhaust around the propeller shaft, out of the rear holes, and out of the overboard indicator if you have one. Run outboard at idle for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, turn off the outboard. And immediately after that, turn off the water tap. The reason for running the outboard for 20 minutes is 1. To ensure that stabilized fuel has circulated through the whole fuel system. 2. To let the engine reach operating temperature so that the thermostat or thermostats will open. And 3. We want to flush the cooling system from any residual salt or debris that's accumulated over the summer. going to open the hood by releasing the hood catches. Now there's a couple areas where we'll be working. We'll be working mainly at the front here, at the carburetors, and here at the spark plugs. So we're going to start at the front, at the carburetors. Okay, we get around to the front of the outboard, and on this 70 horse we're looking at the airbox cover for the carburetors, and we can see that there's a number of screws to be removed in order to take the front part of the airbox off. There are different covers. This is a V4, a typical V4 cover. This is a V6 or V4 cover off something newer like in the 90s, and that's the back of it. And we also have the old style, like from the early 70s. They're metal. This is off a smaller outboard single carburetor, and this is off like a 50 horse, 80s, 90s. Because there is such a variety of different airboxes and designs, our suggestion is to locate the model number on your boat first. I'll just give you a clip of my how to locate the model number video, so it'll help you find the model number on your particular Evinrude or Johnson. To locate your model number, find a plate located on the port side of the engine. It may be a metal plate like what you see on this engine here. It could also be a sticker, and on an older engine you want to look in this area right here for a plate that has a model number, and on the newer engines you'll find the sticker again on the port side right about there. Once you have your model number, I would recommend going to a place on the internet called boats.net. You can type in your model number there, and that will give you the year, and it'll also lead you to the parts diagrams. Look for a heading under the parts diagrams that says carburetors or intake, and you should be able to bring up a parts diagram that will show you more or less what the configuration of your particular airbox is. So what I'm using here is a 1/4 inch socket, 1/4 inch drive and 1/4 inch, with a extension with this is an extension, 1/4 inch extensor with a handle on it, and a 1/4 inch drive ratchet. And now our carburetors are revealed to us. The openings to our carburetors are revealed to us. It's in these openings that we will be spraying the fogging oil for fogging the outboard for winterization. The product that I choose to use for fogging the engines is called Seafoam Deep Creep. I like this particular product because it's not really heavy oil, and it makes it easier for starting the engine in the spring when you have a lighter oil as opposed to a really heavy oil. However, there are a lot of fogging oils out there and that are available at marine shops and at automotive retailers, and you can choose whichever one you feel is best for you. Turn on the water, start the outboard, set the idle to about 1200 using your warm-up lever, and now you can take your fogging oil, whichever one you've got, and begin to spray into each carburetor opening, a little bit into each, until the engine starts to seriously slow down from the amount of oil that you're putting in. I use about a half a can, say on this 3-cylinder model that I'm working on here. And if I were working on like a 6-cylinder, I might use a whole can through here. But I use about a half a can in this procedure. Now we'll remove the spark plugs. Locate your spark plug wires and remove the spark plug wires very carefully. I'll be using a torque wrench to remove my spark plugs. I use a torque wrench in order to avoid over tightening the spark plugs. And also I can tell using my torque wrench whether the spark plugs are already too tight. But it saves you a lot of hassle in an aluminum head if you use a torque wrench to properly secure the spark plugs into the cylinder head. In this case, on this engine, my torque wrench is set to 20 foot-pounds. When the spark plugs are removed, of course, the cylinders are exposed, and it gives us a place to put in the fogging oil through the spark plug holes. So take your fogging oil and spray it directly into the spark plug holes, however many cylinders you have. And I would use in this engine, this 3-cylinder application, I would use the rest of the can basically distributed evenly through the cylinders. Just going to do this on all 3 cylinders. The rule of thumb is to just crank the flywheel. You might want to wear gloves. I think how uncalloused or calloused your hands are, but you just want to crank this around so the oil you just put in the cylinders will kind of get worked around. Start by putting our spark plugs back in. Again, using a torque wrench set to 20 foot-pounds. We will tighten these very slowly until we hear the click. We'll replace our spark plug wires. The next thing we'll be doing is draining the fuel out of the carburetors. And in this photo you can see the drain screw is hidden behind the rear part of the airbox cover, which means I'll have to remove these screws and remove the rear part of the airbox cover in order to access the drain screws. See, as we pull this cover back, there's a hose attached to a nipple on the bottom of this cover, and there's also a gasket. Now this gasket, normally if you replace them, at least at our shop, we glue them onto the inner airbox, the rear airbox, so that they stay in place. This one's been glued and probably will stay in place for us, so we'll just have to wipe it. And this is where it was bolted onto the carburetors, and now we can see freely our drain screws. Now the drain screws on most Evinrude Johnson carburetors do look like this. Not all of them are in the front. Some of them are actually on the side over here and don't require the rear airbox cover to come off. So you're going to have to figure out where these screws are on your carburetors so that you can decide whether you need to take this inner airbox cover off. To find the specific location of the drain screws on your carburetor, I refer you back to boats.net or similar place with a parts diagram to help you. screw out. The gas will drain out of it. Give it a shot. Once it's finished draining, give it a shot of fogging oil. Screw back in. Snug it up. Do this with all three. If you have 6, or if you have 4, or if you have what looks like 2, but there's actually 4 bowls, and they would be on the side. Drain them all, shoot them all with fogging oil, so that there's fogging oil sitting in the bottom of the carburetors, and this way all the needles and seats will stay open. If you want to replace this gasket, you can as well if it's broken or torn in these areas here, and you might want to do that. And now when we put the air box back in place, we'll need a pair of needle nose pliers in order to connect that hose back to the fitting there. So we just want to wipe this gasket. On the air box. It'll always be a little wet. Make sure that it's glued in place. Just grab that hose with the needle nose pliers like that. We can put the airbox cover back on that we. Okay. These screws don't require Loctite.
Greasing. Use a marine grade number 2 EP grease. Here's a sample of what we use in our shop. Typical grease nipple locations are on the steering pivot, the tilt hinge pivots, the lock mechanism shaft, and the steering cable.
We finished greasing all the grease nipples we could find with the waterproof grease. The reason we do that as part of winter storage is because water does get into like the steering pin, which is located in this area here, from down in here to down in here, and water can get trapped in there, and so it can cause a lot of rust. And same with the other pins and hinges. So we want to lubricate all that stuff and get water out of it.
Locate your tilt and trim system, usually located between the stern clamps on most Evinrude and Johnsons.
And most of the internal tilt and trim systems that are found in between the transom clamps or stern clamps will have a reservoir filled. I'm just going to pull that reservoir full, button out, or screw out, and we don't want to damage the O-ring. We're just going to leave that for now. I have a light, what I call a light on a stick, and I can turn that on. And I can actually stick that in there and have a look at the condition of the oil. And if I'm still not satisfied that I can see the oil, then I can use something like for a dipstick, something that won't get lost. I'm going to use a little plastic wire tie. I'm just going to dip it into the reservoir, and I'm just going to lay that out onto my cloth.
Just check to be sure that the oil in your tilt and trim system doesn't have a milky consistency, emulsified with water, either like a red, a gray, a pink emulsified color. If there's water in your tilt and trim system, you would want to bring this in and have it repaired, any leaks, before winter, because water in the oil in the freezing temperatures can crack the housing.
I'm satisfied that I don't have a milky colored red or milky gray consistency to my tilt and trim oil. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this reservoir fill back in. I'm going to tighten it.
Remove any and all drain plugs from the boat. Drain the water out of the boat if there is any, and leave them out for the winter season so that water doesn't accumulate inside your boat. Let's start by locating the drain screws.
The one on the bottom is located here, down by this gate. This bolt here, if there's an Allen screw bolt or a Phillips head bolt in this area here by the water pickup screens, do not touch that. Do not ever touch that. You'll need to bring the whole thing in and get it put back together properly if you do. This is the top one in this area here. Moving the bottom screw. And then the top screw. We're going to allow this to drain for about 20 minutes. The oil that's coming out is clear and clean like this, then everything is okay. If you have in your pan, you see emulsified oil, which is a milky oil, this is an indication that your lower unit, which is this piece from here down, may need to have the seals in it redone.
Refill using marine grade gear oil, and if you choose, you can get a pump for pumping from the bottom up. We put our pump in the bottom drain and we pump up the oil from the bottom up until it starts to ooze out of the top screw. Thread in the top screw as tightly as you can, and this will seal, create a vacuum, and then we remove the pump and quickly install the bottom screw. Tighten your drain screws very well. Clean and grease the propeller shaft. Once you're done cleaning the shaft, use a marine grade grease like we used earlier in the grease gun, and put the marine grade grease on the prop shaft. I like to use a toothbrush, seems to make it easier, but you can use a rag or your finger, whatever you like. And this will protect the prop shaft from any rust damage.
When you store your outboard, you do not want to store it in an upright position. I'll show you the position that is best. Now, I understand that some boats, you want the front of the boat up as far as possible, so that if water gets under your very good cover that you put on your boat to protect it, that it will drain out the drain in the back of the boat. However, if you want, the best way to store the outboard is in the upright position, a level position, as best as you can. So I'll just change the position of this and I'll show you. So this is the position that you want the outboard sitting in for storage. The reason for this is, if it's tilted up, water and snow can accumulate in the exhaust. This is actually where the exhaust comes out here behind the propeller. And it can crack and freeze, and it can rust things inside that can compensate.
Once your boat is parked and the outboard is level, you can go ahead and remove the batteries. Put your batteries on a charger to bring them to a full charge, usually overnight, and then store them in a warm or cool, dry place, but do not store them on cement. Well, that summarizes our winterizing video. I hope that was very helpful. Don't forget to visit our site and have a great week.